We're gonna fix up your grandparents' house and turn it into a guest house. Your parents' house is pretty much ours now, isn't it? Then, the in-laws joined in with their comments. The worthless daughter-in-law is only worth $1 for a part-time job. Exactly. The lady here who doesn't do a single part-time job should just work from morning till night. While the three of them nice being a college student. Who do you think is paying for your college education? We haven't used a single penny of Dad's money for tuition or living expenses. Not since high school. These words not only surprised James but also his parents. What do you mean, Kathy? So, I took this opportunity to speak up. What? You didn't know? Yes, the children were not relying on James for their college fees. My name is Kathy Harrison. I'm a 45-year-old housewife living in a provincial city. Since my son, Alex, and daughter, Emma, went to college in Boston, it has been just my husband, James, and me living together. The kids are currently lodging at my family home near Boston. Alex is striving to become an expert in architectural history. And Emma is working hard with the goal of becoming a curator. However, James never had good feelings towards the kids. Or my family home that welcomed them as lodgers. Perhaps that ultimately led to the breakdown of our relationship. After all, my husband James was always dissatisfied with something. Especially with the company he worked for. I'm going to quit that company. He has been saying this for about the last 10 years. James works at a regional sales office of the company I used to work for. After we got married, he transferred to the sales office in the state where his parents lived. And these in-laws of mine, we never really got along. The in-laws' home is somewhat far from our workplace. So, I rented an apartment, but whenever they had the chance, the in-laws would drive over to our place. And when I vented about James's complaints about his job, they would blame me. It's because you're not supportive enough. A wife should uplift and motivate her husband. It's understandable to complain about the company. But what can I say to James when he doesn't share even one reason for his complaints? For the past 10 years, I've always felt this frustration towards him. James' dissatisfaction with his job also extended to the children. First, he would complain about not getting a raise. I suggested going to work part-time. But James wouldn't allow it, insisting that I stay home, keep the house perfect, and wait for him. When I argued about how we would manage the children's future tuition fees, his constant reply was that they should attend a local university that they could commute to from home. James always thought about minimizing the costs of our children's education. He would only accept them attending a national or public university within commuting distance. However, the children resisted this as much as they could. Where in this state can you study architectural history? Sure, there are universities where you can get a curator's qualification. But the number of museums and galleries is overwhelmingly higher in Boston than here. James was extremely irritated and yelled at this argument from the kids. Who do you think is paying for your education? Every time I witnessed such exchanges, I sighed. I believe it's a parent's responsibility to support and nurture their children's talents as much as possible. Indeed, my parents did the same for me. And the children are exceptionally gifted, much more than you would expect from us. They had been assured by their high school that they could easily get into their desired universities in Boston. How could parents not support them? I always thought this way. So, I contacted my father at our family home. By this point, my mother had passed away, and my father was living alone in the family home. My father, who was already over 80, was still spry and capable of doing household chores, though he sometimes had helpers come for shopping and other tasks. As someone who was dearly loved and raised by my parents, I was worried about my father living alone. Being the youngest of 4 siblings, I have 3 older brothers who were also concerned about our father after our mother's death. They suggested living together or moving him to a paid facility. But my father insisted on staying in his home, so they only checked on him occasionally. So, I suggested to James that the kids lodging at my family home could also serve as a way to look after my father. James readily agreed, as long as it meant not having to spend money on the kids' lodging. James even brazenly said, "Since our kids are looking after him, make him pay for their meals." I was genuinely upset when he said this. In reality, my father was overjoyed that his grandchildren were coming to stay with him consecutively. "Don't worry about the meal expenses, I have savings," he told me, and I decided to rely on his words. I sent the children off, telling them to take good care of the household chores and their grandfather. However, last year, my father passed away. "Grandpa? Mom, come quickly." It was Emma who called me from the hospital where my father had been taken. In the time it took me to get there, the 2 young ones scrambled to make arrangements as told by the hospital staff. And eventually, they had to witness his passing. When I finally arrived at the hospital after taking a taxi and the train, what greeted me was the silent figure of my father. Seeing me, the 2 of them instinctively ran up to me. I held the backs of the 2 sobbing children and said thank them. During the train ride, I had contacted my scattered brothers to gather the relatives. Following that were the wake and funeral, along with discussions about inheritance issues while the relatives were still gathered. At this time, one of my brothers said to me, "Kathy, what about your husband? James? What's he doing?" I couldn't answer at that moment. When I hurriedly left after receiving the call from the 2, I had only managed to send a message to James saying, "Dad is critically ill, so I'm going to the family home. And he's passed away, so there's a wake and funeral." Yes, I couldn't get through to James directly by phone. So, I also called his workplace, only to be told that he was on leave. By the time I finally got through to James directly, it was already the day of the funeral. And James said, "Your dad's funeral? Isn't that today? You've got 3 siblings, so there's no need for me to show up now." At that moment, my feelings towards James cooled completely. The word divorce started to form in my mind amidst the events surrounding the funeral. Since then, I've been discreetly taking steps towards divorce, unknown to James. Then, one day, "Kathy, we're going to your parents' house." James suddenly said this. "My parents' house? Are we going to see the kids?" "Huh? Oh, yeah. Well, we'll see them too." Was it not about seeing the kids? Despite my doubts, I continued the conversation. There was still something I wanted to ask. "But today's a weekday, right? Did you take the day off work?" "Work? Oh, yeah, work. I quit." I was shocked. "I haven't heard anything about that." "Huh? I didn't think I needed to tell you everything." "Of course, you do." "What are you talking about? I'm your wife, and I manage our household finances. How am I supposed to do that without knowing?" James knew better than anyone that we needed money to let our 2 children attend universities in Boston without scholarships. That's why he opposed their choice of schools. I thought, but why now, at this moment? Anyway, we're going. Saying that, James forced me into the car without any room for discussion and drove me to the family home. The silence in the car was so heavy that I had to turn on the radio to bear it. There was no conversation even at the rest stop on the way. When we arrived at the family home in the afternoon and parked the car on the driveway, I noticed a car that looked familiar already parked there. Not only that, vans and light trucks with the logos of interior construction companies were also there. What on earth was happening at my family home? You're late, James. We've been waiting forever. As I was about to check the license plates, I heard their voices. Steve, Monica, why are you here? What, James, you haven't told her yet? Kathy is a bit slow to catch on, so you have to spell it out for her. Slow to catch on. How many times had they said that to me? I had been told so often in the past. That's why, even the way of speaking that used to be natural for me, I had adjusted to fit these people. And I thought they had stopped saying it lately, but why bring it up now? What is going on? What are you planning to do? You've been quiet all this time. If I told you, you'd make a fuss, right? Something I'd make a fuss about? So you kept quiet on purpose? You really are clueless. Saying that, James gestured towards my family home. We're gonna fix up your grandparents' house and turn it into a guest house. What? What was this man talking about? That's why you're so clueless. Your family home is ours now, right? We're going to use it for a guest house for foreigners. I wasn't informed about this. Of course, you weren't. I thought you'd oppose it if I told you. Anger flared up inside me. My childhood home. A home lovingly maintained and passed down by my parents from their parents. And these people intended to trample all over it with dirty shoes. Is that why you quit your job? There was an early retirement program. The company wanted to reduce staff anyway, so I took the offer. But to do so without discussing it with me. Didn't I tell you? If I said anything, you'd definitely oppose it. That's only natural, of course. The worthless daughter-in-law is only worth $1 for a part-time job. Exactly. The lady here who doesn't do a single part-time job should just work from morning till night. Who said I couldn't work part-time? While the three of them were blaming me, figures emerged from the family home. Oh, Mom and Dad? And you guys over there. I thought it was noisy outside. It's shameful for adults to be like this. The ones who came out from the house were Alex and Emma. What are you two doing here on a weekday? Funny you should say that. Aren't you supposed to be working on a weekday, Dad? By the way, we college students are on a long spring break now. Right? Yeah. The close siblings exchanged glances. Must be nice being college students. Do you have any idea who you have to thank for being able to go to college? You lack gratitude towards your father, who has been earning for you all this time. The two children suddenly burst into laughter as if they couldn't help it. Hey, what's so funny? Oh? We're laughing at the fact that Dad knows nothing. Or rather, chose not to know anything. Right? Exactly. The two shared a laugh. We might have depended on Dad for high school, but for college, we haven't used a single penny of Dad's money for tuition or living expenses. In fact, we'd be happy to pay back everything down to the last cent if you'd like. What did you say? These words surprised not only James, but also the in-laws. What do you mean, Kathy? That's when I took the opportunity to speak up. What? You didn't know? What's with that tone? I'm saying you didn't know. The kids have been paying for their college expenses out of their own accounts. All three of them opened their mouths in surprise. Well, I myself didn't know until very recently. Standing and talking in the yard is tiring. Why don't we go inside for now? With a look of mild annoyance, Alex gestured for us to come inside. But Alex, they're working inside, what should we do? We can go somewhere they're not working, right? Then, the kitchen. The kids, who knew this house better than anyone, quickly went inside, gesturing for us to follow. In the meantime, I glanced through the open glass doors of the veranda. Lined up shoes, blue tarps, and various cables indicated ongoing work. Though there was no sound of machinery. Only the faint signs of people moving could be heard. Oh, they've already started working, haven't they? No matter what you say, the one who acts first wins. The in-laws looked pleased as they observed this. And James snorted through his nose at me, as if to mock. It seems these people haven't realized their mistake yet. If that's the case, it seems like the kids can handle what comes next. The in-laws happily headed for the reception room immediately. To the right upon entering, but were quickly corrected by Alex. No, not there. The reception room is off limits. Kitchen, as Alex had said, was down the hall to the left just before the stairs. A room that used to be on the right when I was growing up. However, after I got married and left the house, the kitchen had been moved to make way for a larger bath and toilet, as I had heard. My parents had renovated it thinking it would be helpful when they needed care. Indeed, my mother passed away in the hospital before needing care. And my father was healthy until a year before his death. They probably realized the old bath would be inconvenient. Thanks to that, the space must have been comfortable for the two children who lived here afterward. And kitchen, as mentioned, was originally two small rooms that had been combined into a large living dining room. The remnants of the old kitchen were visible across the corridor on the north side. We were directed to sit at the table in the middle of this kitchen by the children. Aren't you going to serve some coffee? This is what happens when you're not disciplined. I'll serve coffee to those who should get it. Here you go, Mom, Emma said, pouring coffee just for me and themselves. What's with that attitude? Well, as the owners of this house, we can't extend any courtesy to someone who wants to alter it in odd ways. Alex looked coldly at the three others, excluding me. You knew about this? And about being the owner? I silently snorted. That's exactly it. Didn't you know? There's a limit to being uninvolved. So what? Alex operated a tablet nearby, accessing a website, and thrust the screen towards James. Land registry. Applied here and got the registry documents sent over. This right here. He continued to manipulate the device, displaying the registration document. Yeah, it's really convenient nowadays. You can get all this stuff online. What the registry document revealed was the entire building and land. And the name listed as the owner was. Your name is on the ownership? With a trembling voice, James looked up at Alex and murmured. Yeah. Grandpa left this house and land, along with enough money to manage it and cover our college expenses, to Emma and me. You didn't know because you didn't come to the funeral, Dad. James groaned. Why didn't you tell me something so important? Well, the reason you're here now is proof enough, isn't it? While placing a glass of water in front of them, Emma said. Turning this precious house into a guest house? What are you talking about? Do you guys even realize the architectural historical value of this house? I bet you don't. What are you, a young upstart, getting all high and mighty? When I was young, there were plenty of houses like this. Plenty when you were young, huh? But they're not around anymore, are they? Alex casually turned his head around. That transom over there. Do you know its value? The area they referred to was originally 2 guest rooms, with the transom left intact. Beautiful craftsmanship remains between what used to be 2 rooms. And I bet you don't even understand why the kitchen was modernized to face south. Saying that, they stood up as if inviting us to follow. I quickly stood as well, immediately understanding what the kids wanted to say. Alex and Emma headed towards one of the 3 rooms across the middle corridor. and slid open the door. "Oh, what's up, Alex?" A man, who had been climbing a ladder over a blue sheet, greeted us. The door to the connecting rooms were all open, revealing several young people in jumpsuits working with measuring instruments and small brushes. "Professor, could you please drill into these people the value of this house?" "Oh?" With a hearty well, the person referred to as the professor climbed down from the ladder. "Ah. Are you the guys planning to remodel this place into a modern-style room without permission?" Referring to them as a "you guys," the in-laws' temples visibly twitched. "That's right. We brought them all together, so please, Professor, give them a proper lecture." The professor approached us with an unmistakably gleeful look. "Well, nice to meet you. I'm the seminar advisor for Alex." "Seminar advisor? I do hold such a title, yes." The business card the professor handed out had his title as the head of the architecture department at Alex's university. "That professor is." "Ah." When he eagerly joined my seminar, I heard about this house. Upon further inquiry, isn't it a corridor-style house built during the old era? Huh? Just an old, common house, right? Old-fashioned. I can't let that comment go. The professor smiled and stepped forward. "Do you understand the value of this lighting?" Everyone looked up simultaneously. "It's just a round light cover, isn't it? With some strange pattern." "Oh dear, you're not aware that this pattern is Art Nouveau." From there, the professor had the floor. The lighting cover, likely original, was frosted glass with an Art Nouveau design of plants. The glass in the middle of the window frame facing outside had Art Deco geometric patterns. And some exterior glass doors also featured cutting-edge designs of the time. What's marvelous is that these are still beautifully preserved today. What's so special about that? Do you know where you are? The professor tilted his head as if to say, "You don't know, do you?" We are somewhat away, but still within Boston. How important it is that a wooden single-story building has maintained its original form through the turbulent old periods. And then, Emma moved on to the next room. "John, please explain this part too." The three of them looked puzzled. Emma had called out to a young man who was meticulously cleaning around the alcove with a feather duster and cotton swabs. "Yeah, I'm a curator at a museum. Since I'm an alumnus of Emma's university, well, I guess I'm a senior." Now a curator, another profession unfamiliar to the three, had joined the scene, surprising them. "This house is truly a treasure trove." "Huh?" "Yes, the rightful owners here decided it's important to preserve. So they're donating it to the museum. Look, this vase, for example." The curator pointed to a vase displayed at the end of the middle corridor. "What's this?" "It's beautifully patterned but quite dirty, isn't it?" "Well, it's a bit dirty, yes. It's from China's Ming Dynasty. The beauty of this plant-patterned firing. Magnificent. China's Ming Dynasty." It seemed he didn't grasp the significance at once. "To put it simply, it's over 500 years old." I interrupted. Then, the in-laws gasped in shock. Such an antique was. Yes, this house still has many hidden treasures. Even this hanging scroll is by a great master of Japanese painting from his youth. Known to exist but never found until now. The mother-in-law shrieked in disbelief. Indeed, the previous generations collected these treasures, surviving through turbulent times. James suddenly realized something. "Emma, you're donating it to a museum." "Yes. We can't risk such valuable items being destroyed carelessly." "Idiot. If they're worth something, why wouldn't you sell them for money?" Emma sighed deeply. This is exactly why we never told you, despite Grandpa talking about it. You think like this. What kind of attitude is that towards your parent? Look, inheriting such things is a huge responsibility. Taxes and all that. How could we leave items whose value and potential for sale are uncertain? Especially with people around who might destroy them at any moment? Indeed. Likely, both kids had learned quite a bit from my father about these matters. By the way, I heard about the remodeling request for this house from one of our graduates. Professor interjected again. Isn't that a leak of client information? James countered that. Well, he's not wrong in that regard. No, we just received information that this architectural treasure was at risk. It was merely passed along by the wind of rumor from that graduate. When I asked Alex about it, I found out there was a plan I didn't know about and rushed to the contractor. It would have been trouble for them too if they'd proceeded without stopping the plan immediately. James was almost speechless. If the construction had gone ahead, I would have sued you for damages. Alex glared at James. Then, what about that car? Among the contractors, there was simply a graduate who likes modern architecture. It's an architecture department, after all. Right, Alex and the professor exchanged looks. Is that how you treat your father? James lunged at Alex. But the age and vitality gap between a nearly 50-year-old man and his vigorous 20-something son was evident. James couldn't make Alex budge. Given James had always been desk-bound, he stood no chance against Alex's muscles, honed from running around doing fieldwork at university. I don't recognize someone who didn't attend Grandpa's funeral as my parent. Me neither. Right, the kids looked at me. Yes. I too no longer want to be with you. You're being so formal. You're the reason I've been adjusting my tone all this time. Didn't I used to speak like this before? James got heated up. Your way of speaking always felt like you were looking down on me. Exactly, the bride not fitting in with the family's ways. It was only after I married that I realized. That's just how it is. Indeed, I had realized it after getting married. The in-laws, the relatives, all pretending until the wedding. They were rough, unable to distinguish between what was theirs and what was not, which I detested. I never imagined you would think you could own my family home. The in-laws were at a loss for words. James, I'm divorcing you. The kids are grown up, and we don't need maintenance money, so it's fine, right? Shh, divorce, huh? Fine, let's do it. But make sure we settle the property division properly. Property division. I laughed out loud. What assets are you talking about? What? Did you think I didn't know about you squandering our savings on your hobbies? How did you? No, not that. James shouted. I'm talking about the assets you inherited from your father after we got married. That's supposed to be marital property, right? Unfortunately, there's none of that. What do you mean? Right, the kids also exchanged looks. That's why you don't skip funerals. Right. Because he's like that. Not only did my brother and I inherit this house and related matters, but Mom also had a considerable amount of savings made for her before she got married, which wasn't reported to you. That's right. Honestly, I didn't know about it either, but there was no need to mention that to James at this point. My parents seemed to have considered, regardless of who the partner was, what would happen if something went wrong with the marriage. As a precaution, they had created savings accounts in my name through gifts while I was still a student. Part of their assets. Being their only daughter. They were worried about what would happen if they were old and something happened to me. That's why, after consulting with my much older brothers, they had divided a significant sum in advance. My brothers, all in their mid to late 50s, hold quite high positions at their workplaces. And they stated that they didn't particularly need the inheritance from our parents. I was indeed surprised when, after the funeral, they told me, "Your husband is a bit unreliable, so be careful." That also became a trigger for me to investigate what James was doing. After all, you were not just quitting, you were fired, right? I played a recording of the conversation with his boss from the day of the funeral. I thought it might come in handy at the right time. Way to go, Mom, the kids chimed in. So that's why we've been getting parcels here recently. What do you mean? Oh, there was also a message from the escort girl you went on vacation with while you were on leave. I played a recording from my smartphone. No, there's nothing like that between us. It was strictly business. The emphatic voice echoed in the room, and James's face turned red. Oh, it resonates quite well, doesn't it? It's because of the wood, Professor. James gritted his teeth, turned his back on us, and said to his parents, "Let's go home, Mom and Dad." Damn it, who needs this house? Yes, I'll stay here. I'll live in this house I've always loved with my children. I'll send you the divorce papers through a lawyer, so please fill them out properly. I'll also claim compensation for the affair with the stripper. James glared at me fiercely. I ignored it and turned to his parents, and to you both, I'll also cut ties. Please don't involve yourselves with us anymore. I said that with a smile that seemed to clear away years of frustration towards my in-laws. From then on, I decided to live in my parents' house, and would hear about James and his family's situation through my lawyer. It seemed they were in quite a dire state. First, James, though he took early retirement, didn't have a plan for what to do next and was floundering. He was living off his severance pay but was still in his late 40s. Without re-employment, his social insurance would end there. Even thinking about starting a business, the original plan was based on having that family home, without which he had no clear direction, and was now spending his days visiting the job center. A part of his severance pay being converted into my compensation must have been a significant blow to him. As for my in-laws, they were in trouble too. They planned to sell their home and land for their retirement funds, but it seems the property was in violation of the Building Standards Act. Hearing about it from Alex, who got the information through the professor. That area, had something similar to a certain architectural offices scandal happening at one time. What do you mean? Remember, Dad's family home area was kind of a new community? Indeed. They sold cheap but visually appealing prefab homes all at once. However, the materials were low quality, and many aspects barely met the building standards of the time, which would be illegal under current laws. So, what happens then? Such buildings that don't meet current standards can't be sold. What? I was genuinely surprised. So, the house can't be sold. It has to be demolished to turn the land into something valuable. According to the lawyer, my in-laws had already consulted a real estate agent about selling the property. But as Alex mentioned, they were told that only the land had value. My in-laws are in their mid to late 70s. They're considering surrendering their driver's licenses. They wanted to sell the land and the house to move somewhere more convenient. That's when they heard from James about the possibility of living near the city center. And they got excited. It turns out, even the land, located in a declining area of a regional city, wouldn't fetch much. Plus, a significant amount of money would be needed to demolish the house, even if the land sells for $100,000. Demolishing the house could cost about $30,000 to $40,000. So, it's about half gone? The plan is completely ruined then. What would happen if the remaining amount wasn't significant? Currently, they're staying in James' apartment. But if James doesn't find a job soon, moving to an even cheaper apartment seems inevitable. And then, 3 months later. Congratulations. Saying that, the professor, along with the people from Alex's seminar group, gathered around the large kitchen table and gave the signal to toast. Following our discussion, I decided to convert the spacious upper floor of our house into a boarding house for students with meals included. The large bath and washroom are perfect for accommodating multiple residents. 3 of the seminar students have decided to move into our house. It seems that students studying architectural history are thrilled to live in the house itself. The idea to repurpose the house came to me when the group that visited that day said, "It would be nice to live in such a house." My former husband, James, had suggested turning it into a guest house. The idea of repurposing the large house wasn't bad in itself. It was all about how it was used. If James had suggested using the house almost as it was, I might have considered it. However, he did not think so. He only wanted to follow the trend. What could happen to this precious house if it was opened up as such a place? But hosting students who love historical architecture isn't such a bad idea. For me, having been a full-time homemaker for over 20 years, it's not a bad way to start anew. And there are still treasures to be found, Emma said. I hadn't paid much attention, but the house also has a basement, where unexplored items still reside. With the curator moving in, the combination of fun and study will likely continue in the future. I plan to live happily in this nostalgic house for as long as possible.